I just want to start this off with taking you back to elementary school, where you and your best friend threw paper at each other from across the classroom. What would you back then think of you now?
First off, shout out to you for your attention to detail. That's awesome, man. That's really funny, dude. Well played. Um, it's interesting because in this backwards way, I feel like when I was in like elementary school with my friend, um, that's so funny you brought that up. When I was in elementary school with my friend, like I think in the back of my mind, like I felt like I was gonna do something. Like I always wanted to be a lawyer, actually, and I was like, oh, that's like the
Yeah,
craziest profession you can have. Like that's the most impressive thing you can do. And like, yo, it's incredibly impressive. But like I think back then, like I almost like was okay with fucking around a lot and throwing paper back and forth, at my friend and whatever, because I was like I felt like I was gonna do big things. Like I'd hoped and I thought I was gonna be doing big
yeah,
things. So I was kind of cool with it then. So ironically, like I think there was a confidence that I had then that kind of like transitions pretty well to now. But interestingly enough, is like now I almost feel like the more things that I strive to do, I feel like the less I've done, which is really interesting. So in this kind of backwards way, like one, I think I'd be shocked with what I'm doing because a lot of my job comes down to things that like there's two other people in my executive team. So I'm the COO,
yeah,
we have a CEO, and we have a CMO. And the CMO gets to do all the like sexy stuff, like all the marketing, all the psychology, all that kind of stuff. He gets to do all that stuff. And of
yeah,
course, we're all involved, but that's like his official job, right? My job is a lot of like the not sexy stuff that allows the company to have fun, like allows the company to have some of the results that they can then buy sexy stuff. So
yeah,
my point in saying this is that when I was like, if I was my young man back then looking at me now, I'd be so shocked that like I look at I don't know, I see spreadsheets the amount that I do. I talk to like suppliers and forwarders, carriers, and look at like financial documents and all this kind of shit. Like I just didn't think that this would be what I would be doing. But like in terms of the actual like day-to-day job, like I'm super blessed because it's like it's so much fun. So what to answer the question, what me back then would think about me now, I think I'd be surprised with the actual day to day, but I'd be very like happy because the fulfillment that comes from it and like the position that I enjoy, the position that I have, like really allows me to lean into the whole content creation thing because I can like, I've just had I came from a spot, I'm sure we'll get into this soon. I came from a place where like I had no background in what I was doing and I kind of learned it all from just like picking up what books made sense to me at the time. And like, yeah, I'm really happy that I'm really happy that I can see in myself that I'm kind of walking proof that like yeah, like I said to you earlier before we kind of started the cast, like that like if you actually just obsess with learning the right lessons, like and you do that all the time, like eventually with a couple right pushes, like they will express themselves in real success. And not that I even feel like I'm there yet, honestly. Like I could be a billionaire and I'd still not think that I was that successful. I think that's just the case as you achieve more and more. Um, but like it was even funny, and I don't, again going on another tangent, but it was funny because even when you said to me, when you're like, "Oh, you impact whatever," you said like 10,000 people on Twitter, whatever. Like it's funny because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like that. I'm so happy that all those people are impacted, and I've had a couple calls like this or podcasts like this where people have said some like similar stuff where they like what I'm writing, but it still feels like that's nobody compared to the amount of people that like I want to impact. So anyway, yeah, I think I'd be impressed with how like my day to day, like how happy and fulfilled I am, but I'd
yeah.
be shocked at the actual like the actual job that I have. Yeah.
Love it, man. So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said that you always kind of knew that you're going to do big things. Why was that?
Um, I think that I think that I just knew that like I was unwilling to kind of ever feel like an NPC. Like I never wanted to feel like I was a background character in someone else's life, really. As much as I want to help a lot of people. Like I think I just had a mixture of. I mean, like actually, I can't remember who I heard say this, but again, someone that I read probably they said that there's this like they did this large study of like people who are entrepreneurial or just entrepreneurs in general, and they found that there was three sort of factors that were consistent amongst these people. The first one was a strong belief that they deserve more. So that's one, is that it's not only that they want more, it's that they deserve more. So again, this is like, I feel like I'm the main character, let's say. Okay. So I believe that
Yeah.
I deserve more. The second one is a next to crippling amount of not self degradation, but it's almost like of insecurity, kind of insecurity, where it's like, so the first two are these like contrasting things, where the first one is like, I feel like I deserve all this stuff. Then the second one is like, I actually feel like I'm very insecure about what I can do or who I am or whatever. And that's very common. Um, and then the third one was the ability to delay gratification. So we put this all together and we have this picture of someone who believes that they should have more. So that's coming to them in life. That's just going to come to them. But they also have this insecurity, which is kind of what pushes them to move on it quicker because they don't want to feel that insecurity. So they think the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is going to come to them. And then they move faster because of the insecurity, the state that they're currently in. They want to get to that pot of gold as soon as possible. But then the third thing comes in and it's like, but they're able to delay the gratification. So all the small kind of booby traps and pitfalls that they may have fallen into along the way, which is like, again, meaningless pleasure, or jumping into this and like getting drunk every day, smoking weed every day, like
Yeah.
going out to clubs every single weekend, whatever. They can avoid that because they can delay that gratification so that they can get to that pot of gold. So for me, I think really like when you ask me like, um, when you ask me that last question, it's my answer is really just that I think that I definitely have those three things. And so I just want to get to that sort of like pot of gold as quickly as possible. And so I kind of thought that I knew that I'd get something at the end of the day. Like I knew that I didn't want to be that kind of NPC. I wanted to be that sort of like main character. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's that first thing where I think I just deserved more. And so I just keep chasing it. And I think anyone, like I said, who's entrepreneurial, at all, or just like self-development, improvement minded, especially as a young man, I think like it's the same thing for them too, where it's like they have that first thing where they know they deserve more. There's that second thing where they have some insecurity, they want to improve something. That's why they're trying to self-improve, is because they're not already where they want to be. And that third thing, delayed gratification, is like I said before, is like if you focus on the right creators and the right people and you consume them all the time, then that's going to teach you the skills of delayed gratification. It's going to also teach you that the people you look up to have that. And so if you want what they have, you need to do what they do.
Bro, 100%. I literally got shivers because I could relate to that so much.
Awesome,
Like
man.
I found that was like exactly how I was back then. Like I had this really big ego. Like I had this like main character syndrome, you could say. But I was also like really insecure and like socially anxious. Like I just felt like I was less than other people.
Mhm.
And I guess those kind of combined to make this more like entrepreneurial spirit. You
Yeah, dude.
so you think you think you were like quite insecure back then?
Yeah, man. I think here's the thing. I think honestly, insecurity, if you're an insecure person, like what I've realized about myself, is like it doesn't ever really disappear. Like the insecurity doesn't
Oh
disappear.
yeah.
It kind of just changes what the focus is on. So for example, let's say you're insecure about your body or something. You might start working out or do whatever, and then even though you are still insecure, you're still going to be insecure, not necessarily about that particular thing. You might not be insecure about your body any longer. If you work really hard, you look in the mirror, you feel like you look great. But that insecurity you will find begins to morph. And I think sometimes we can misunderstand what insecurity is. So for example, you might think insecurity is like, oh, I feel this deep like deficiency in myself. But really insecurity can also just be this huge desire to be better. It's like, it's not that I think I'm
Yeah.
shit. And it might start that way, right? When you have, when you're level one in life and you have nothing and you're running around with your like, your armor is basically like a cloth, fucking whatever, in all these like Skyrim video games, you
Yeah.
have nothing, right? And so at that
You're
point, you're like,
naked.
okay, I mean, yeah, it's exactly. At that point, you're insecure because you're like, okay, I actually have not done anything. Like I literally have done nothing. I don't look very good. I haven't made any money. My social group is maybe a joke, whatever. But then I feel like you get to a point where you have done some things, and the insecurity is not necessarily about being like, oh, I don't have anything or whatever. It's more just like I'm insecure about the fact that I'm not where I want to be yet, or who I want to be yet. So it's like the same thing where it's like before I had, let's say, 1,000 followers, I was like, okay, I was like, this sucks because I'm not who I want to be. Like, I want to have 1,000 people. I want to be able to put something out and have 1,000 people potentially see that. And so when I had like 100, I felt really insecure. Like, I was like, "Ah, whatever." But then, I spent time in groups with people who had 1,000, and I was like, shit, like I'm the odd one out. So then I tried to, I guess insecure about that. So I tried to push. And then, but now the same thing's happening with 10,000, where like some of my closest friends on the kind of creator community have like 300, 400,000. And so it's like, for me, it's like 10,000 is nothing. But then I know I'm going to get to that same point, three, 400,000. And I'm going to be like, well, I don't have a million. And I'm just going to keep going. And so it's like the insecurity is like, it's not always, I think people who are not of this sort of like, you obviously seem like one of these kinds of people who are going to go really far. But I think the people that don't have that mind of really pushing far in life, they don't understand that they think that insecurity is a bad thing when it's actually like, it's a bit of a superpower because it's just the
Yeah.
constant, that's what it is to be. So for example, like entrepreneurship comes from this concept of being enterprising. And being enterprising is wanting to continue to push and push and push and push and push. You're not happy with just building one little like house. You want to build a village and then a town and a city and a whole fucking planet. You just want to keep going and
Yeah.
going. And so that's what insecurity kind of becomes. It doesn't disappear. So when you ask me if I was insecure back then, I think I'll always be insecure. But it's not because I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything and I have nothing. It's more so just that I think I will never be fully satisfied. And even though I can be happy with what I've done and who I am, when I am, I'll never be fully satisfied. And it's like this, I guess it's in that sense, it's an insecurity of being like, there's still more that I want to achieve, there's still more that I want to give, et cetera, et cetera. So I think insecurity never fully disappears. It just kind of changes what your focus is on.
Yeah, that's so true. How do you plan on like kind of making sure that doesn't go too far? Because I feel like that is a very good trait to have because it's like it's making you like want more and like motivating you to achieve big things. But then I think there's a point where that starts to become damaging to your mental health. How do you think you're gonna like, or how do you plan on like keeping kind of the good side of it, but also like minimizing the bad?
Mhm. Um, like it's kind of a hard keeping the good, minimizing the bad is kind of difficult because I have a couple different answers I could give. I think one thing is that I think until you have achieved something that's in the direction of where you want to go, I think I wouldn't even I mean, this is just my own disposition. Like, and maybe I can't recommend this to anyone, but this is just my own answer for myself. Like, I don't think I would have any interest in minimizing the bad. I just want all of it because that I think one of the largest things that's lacking, especially for young men, is any sort of motivation in any direction. They just they just sedate themselves all day. And so like if you feel a strong emotion to take any sort of action, like I already see that as inherently positive. So if your insecurity is something that's like gonna push you, and it might like let's say like 50% of the time you look in the mirror and you like hate yourself because you're like I just hate my body or whatever, or your bank
Yeah.
account, whatever it might be. But the other 50% of the time you're like okay, like because I hate myself, I'm going to the gym and I'm working really hard. Like I would take that trade. I wouldn't concern myself with trying to dampen that emotion whatsoever, positive or negative, just because, again, I think the fact that I have some desire to do something or some like impetus to move in some way, I think already is pretty rare. And so I wouldn't want to get rid of that. Um, but you are right when you say like there's a mental health like side of the insecurity. I think there's a couple things that are really helpful. I think one is definitely having a group of people around you who you can be super open about
Mhm.
that with. So the fact that you're insecure, like again, our executive team, like we always talk about that. Like we're always talking about the fact that we're like, man, like compared to you two guys, I feel like I'm doing nothing. And then the other guy will be like, compared to you two guys, and the other guy will be like, compared to you two guys. And so insecurity is like a pretty common topic for us. So we kind of like laugh at it. That's one thing I'd say, like making it public, like not public, but like having a group where you can like discuss it's really helpful. The next thing is like just really just like tried and true tools, man. Like meditation's like huge. Like I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot of I've read like a lot of classic philosophy because that's actually what my degree was in, believe it or not, in university.
Oh yeah.
But honestly, like Seneca said, like basically, like we are more likely to be frightened than we are to be crushed, and it's just this idea that like 99% of suffering happens in your head. So it's like I think that if you counteract the fact that you might have the negative sides of insecurity in your brain with tried and true tools like meditation, um, it's pretty. I think the negative side kind of takes care of itself. Like there's not much room. I think anyone who's like, for example, this might be a hot take. Like, I think anyone who's like really mentally struggling, if they don't have meditation as part of their attempt to improve themselves, I think that there's still like a leaf that needs to be turned over, kind of thing. Like, you haven't looked everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like if someone's like, "Oh, I'm depressed." It's like, "Well, do you meditate? And like, have you tried meditation?" Like seriously tried. And by try, I don't mean you sat in a chair, closed your eyes for a minute. I mean like you spent 6 months daily, like practicing it and trying to be as focused as possible while you were doing it, really pursuing it with the spirit in which it should be pursued. So I think that like a lot of the management of it, I actually haven't given it that much thought because I've been fortunate in the sense that I think a lot of the practices that I just naturally do kind of just keep that at bay. I do think it gets worse when I ditch some of these practices, is what I can say. So
Yeah.
meditation being a big one. Um, but yeah, I'd say that that's mainly what it is. Some of these tried and true practices that are just like the same way as I need to eat and breathe every single day. It's the same thing. It's like I also need to meditate because if I don't, like, I'm not actually putting myself in the best place to move forward.
Yeah, 100%. And I find like the days that I wake up and I just start working or I start my day, I don't meditate, are
Mhm.
always so much worse than the days that I actually do. Just because
Yeah.
my mind isn't really in the like optimal place to get work done or really just do anything. So I think that's like the that's like the best thing about meditation. Like it just puts your mind in such a good place,
It
and
does.
it just makes yeah, it makes like everything else during the day much easier. And and yeah, like I I see a bunch of people um they, like they try to like just work like 12 hours a day or something and don't make time for stuff like sleep or meditation and I think like even if that like takes away from your work time, it's still a really beneficial thing to do because that makes the time that you do work way more productive and you just make the most out of that time rather than having rather than working for 12 hours a day at like 60% of your potential, you'd be working for maybe 8 or 9 at like 80% or 90% of your potential.
For sure.
Yeah, so something you said earlier that was super interesting was that you didn't really have any prior experience before starting your business, and you kind of just learned everything yourself by reading books. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, okay. So how this started. Okay. So basically, um, myself and a couple of friends, like we were doing like drop shipping and all this kind of stuff for like a while. But drop shipping has some like, at least drop shipping, the way it's like shown on like YouTube, if you watch a video like how to drop ship, has some pretty like
Yeah,
big challenges with it that no one really talks about. And I think everyone says that they're like, oh, the things that no one talks about. But actually, I've never heard anyone talk about the fact that. Okay, so I'll give you the full backstory here. So basically, like the issue with a
yeah,
lot of the drop shipping, for anyone who's like um, not familiar with how it works, essentially is this: you buy products from a supplier. So let's say it's in China or wherever it may be, somewhere in Asia, generally speaking.
hmm,
Um, you buy some products from them, and it's basically a wholesale retail model where you buy it for cheaper than you sell it. The drop shipping model inherently basically connotes that you never hold any inventory. So I would buy it from China. So let's say I'm selling to you.
yeah,
You buy it from me for the markup price. Let's say $10. I then buy
yeah,
that for $5 from my supplier in China and send it directly from China to you. The issue with that is because you never so the benefit of that, first of all, is that you don't house any inventory, which is really nice because you don't need to pay any overhead to keep it there. You don't need to worry about shipping costs like to you and all this kind of shit. So those are the conveniences. It's really easy for a kid to get on a
yeah,
computer and start drop shipping. The downside is that because you never see your inventory, you can't do any quality control. You have no control over how fast it ships out to your customer, all this shit. So Amazon
hmm,
has trained the entire world to expect 2, 3, 4 day shipping. Okay. So if you order from some store online and it shows up to you in 2 weeks, that's a reason for complaints. So people are going to complain. So what happens is if you run ads on Facebook to try and get customers to buy your product, when you do that, people are essentially the customer doesn't necessarily see Facebook as a purchasing platform like they might for Facebook Marketplace, but when they see an ad and they click on it, they are now buying through Facebook. They're trusting Facebook's authority to show you something and buy something. But
yeah,
when they get it, maybe 2, 3 weeks, in some cases 6, 7 weeks later, and the quality is not what they
yeah,
expected because again, the seller has never actually seen the quality of the product. When they get that, they then go to Facebook and say, "This is a fucking problem. You sent me something. It took way too long. It's shit quality. Whatever." Now, Facebook, being the absolute monster that it is, will shut will shut me, let's say the drop shipper, down because they don't care about my account. They don't care about the pennies I'm spending. Even if I'm spending $3,000-$4,000 a day, they don't care. They're like, this is nothing. We're Coca-Cola and fucking Apple are giving us way more money. Like we can shut you down, no problem. So essentially what you have here is, I'm sorry. And when they shut you down so that they can keep their platform reliable to their customers. They don't want people to start seeing Facebook itself as some scammy platform. And it kind of
No.
looks that way if all customers are basically buying stuff from Facebook and they're getting these cheap like Chinese products, um, shit quality, they show up 8 weeks late, whatever. So Facebook will just shut you down. And so there's this whole idea behind dropshipping called circumvention. It's exactly what it sounds like, and this is what people don't talk about. People do not talk about the fact that in order to run your dropshipping store, you need to constantly basically be navigating all the terms and conditions so that you don't get shut down. Okay? So that's all background. Is basically dropshipping. The inherent issue with dropshipping is that because you don't hold any inventory, which is the thing that all these gurus will sell you as the cool part, which in theory
Yeah.
it is. The reality is that because you don't do that, you can't control any of the quality, and it moves so quick now. We no longer live in a time where if I got a bad product, I'd have to come over to you, Samuel, and be like, hey, I got this really bad product. You probably shouldn't buy from that guy. And then you'd go tell your friends, they'd tell their friends. It's not like that anymore. It's I get a bad product, and I'll say this to my like 15K on Twitter. I'll say this like, and there's 15,000 people immediately know don't buy from this. And so it's so
Yeah.
fast that your quality and your service has to be so good. So the point is, you set up a store, you go through all this work to set up your Shopify store, you learn how to run ads, you save up your pennies and you put that into the ad account and you run it to try and get a couple sales. And then Facebook just fucking overnight shuts you down. Okay, you have to start from scratch. So that's what we were doing, drop shipping. We had various levels of success, made some money, lost some money. But what had happened is two of my friends had actually started this brand and they were really, really fresh into it. And they were kind of telling us about it. And we were kind of all talking and we were like, okay, we should probably get out of dropshipping and start a brand and give real value because the issue with dropshipping is you're constantly chasing your tail. Like I said, you're setting up a store, you're hoping you get enough sales quickly enough that you make more money than you spent to get those sales. But then inevitably, your shit will get shut down. Like at some point, it's going to get shut down.
Yeah.
Because once you go to volume, again, that's more potential touch points. All it takes is 2 or 3 bad reviews and you're fucked. So as you scale, you're going to choppier and choppier waters. So we're like, okay, let's do branding because when we actually brand, by doing branding, we're not just selling whatever random products on a general dropshipping store. We're actually importing the products. We have our own place to store them, so we can control now the quality. We don't send anything out that's bad. We make sure the timing's really good. Everything. So we got
Yeah.
into the whole branding idea, and we're like, dropshipping's a thing of the past. Let's move into branding. So my couple of friends had started a brand, and then we moved really quickly. And myself and another one of my friends, my partner, we had started our own. Um, Again, various levels of success, but ours we ended up deciding to shut it down. And we'd done one or two after that, but we decided to shut it down. But my other friend who had started like slightly before us was doing okay. So they were getting some sales and things were doing pretty well. And they had this product, and it was this sock. It was like this diabetic sock thing. And we were kind of
Yeah.
just like, it was kind of impressive because everyone that ever hears this, that's like, what do you sell? How do you? And we're approaching 40 million here soon, and people are
No
like,
way. Congrats.
yeah, 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 thanks. People are like, how? Like, what? First of all, what the fuck is a diabetic sock? Like,
Yeah.
that's generally the first question, right? And then they're like, and what? Like 30 million, or in this case, $40 million worth of socks? Like what? Like what's going on here? So anyway, we had that same mindset, but this is way back before the 40 million, right? This is like a
Yeah.
couple of years ago. And I had no training in business other than I was pretty well known in my friend group and all the guys that were dropshipping or whatever, as I was really well read about business in general. And we didn't really consider ourselves necessarily like business guys, like we kind of did, but like we were more just like dudes who like had laptops and like kind of just knew how to run ads and whatever. Well, to various degrees, there were some that were more businessy, some that were less. Um, but anyway, what happened one day is they that so what is now ViaSox, that brand, basically the CEO,
Yeah.
who's one of my best friends, had said, man, like we need our customer service side of things to do better. Like it's just not doing very well. And so he's like, and him and the other founder actually had asked me, they said, listen, like, would you come in and run the customer service department as if it's your own business? Like do whatever you want with it, Like we just trust you because of your basically your knowledge, your background, like your background in just your own research. Because whenever there was like a problem, a lot of business stuff, I would always be able to contribute something, even though I didn't have the actual background. So they were like,
Yeah.
okay, well, just from constant exposure to this knowledge, and they were like, okay, so we want you to come in and run this whole thing, whatever. So I had left the brand that I was building myself with another partner to run this because I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna help them out. I didn't know how long it was gonna be, but I was like, let's help them out, whatever. Um, we got really, really good results there where like our customer service really improved. We actually put in this program, and again, I won't bore you with the details, but we put in this program where we basically like got our customer service agents to be salespeople where they were, if anyone was like cold traffic calling in, or I guess it'd be warm traffic calling into the company to understand, again, like I said before, like, what is this non-binding stock? Like, what will this do for me? What is this, right? Whenever someone would call in to do that, we had basically a person that was more or less incentivized to make a sale on the other side. It wasn't just, hey,
Okay.
here's the information, blah, blah, blah. We gave them not only like a little bit of sales training, but we also gave them an incentive and a system. We built a program so that they could actually sell right there on the phone to people. And this
Yeah.
ended up being pretty interesting. And again, different things would happen. Our customer service satisfaction improved, our sales would improve, all this kind of stuff. And from the get go, I was kind of I was always in the boardroom as like whenever there was a big meeting about making big changes or whatever, like I was always there because a lot of the big contributions to the business I had been making. Um, and again, we had made like some money from dropshipping and stuff like that, so they had trusted, hey, like some, and we were all at a similar-ish level. Again, some above others, but at that once we started making some really big decisions in the company, like it became a point where one of the founders, um, he had left because there was a bit of a falling out. Things didn't really work out. Um, and so I was basically asked to step in as the COO of the company because there's a lot of stuff that I had done where the numbers had kind of spoken for themselves, and we'd been making a lot of progress. So that was a couple of years ago, and now again, now we have a team of, I think if we include everyone, it's about 33, 34, somewhere in there. And it kind of moves up and down. Um, and yeah, I'm the primary operator of the business. The CEO makes, of course, is like involved with a lot of the stuff, but um, yeah, it's a pretty kind of wild ride. So really, it kind of went from this place where we were drop shipping, kind of just like seeing how to do business, whatever,
Yeah.
to a point where I was just reading so much and being so obsessed with like so much of business and all this kind of stuff that I was able to act on some of this information. Like you don't realize what's in your brain until a situation triggers it where you're just like, oh yeah, this is the answer. Like, oh yeah, just do this, blah 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 blah. And that kept happening and happening and happening. And then as you said, you've seen my like YouTube. And by the way, I say what I'm about to say not to be like over cocky or something like that, but I say it because I'm showing like literally anybody can, like I believe anybody with the right like mindset can do this. Where like I went from it, like in a few years, like I went from again just like drop shipping and like losing money, and actually even before that, to fucking just like smoking weed, watching porn, playing video games. That was it.
Yeah.
Going from that to like, okay, I got to make something of myself, to starting self improvement and really consuming people who I trusted and I believed and whose advice I liked. Doing that, reading a lot of books, starting a couple brands, making some money here, realizing I didn't need to have an actual serious job. I dropped out of university to do online business.
Yeah.
Um, I then moved in to a small, very, very small company. We then, as a team, brought that company um, to it's about to be $40 million in 3 years ish, 40 $40 million. And again, I say this always on my YouTube, but it's like, and again, it's like then all of a sudden, like not overnight, but quickly, it's like, okay, I'm making multiple six figures a year. Like things are going really well. So um, and the company's fucking blowing up. And so again, I'll repeat this one more time, is that I say this because anybody, if they really take it, really starts with the knowledge, really starts with that, and then comes the action. And if you just keep doing that, you make sure you're consuming that. And like that's why I make the kind of content I do, is because this is the kind of content I would need to hear and I would obsess with and be like, if I'm going on a run, I'm listening to this content. If I'm on the, like again, treadmill, if I'm walking to work, if I'm sitting in my office, I just have it on my headphones. Like I just listen to this shit all the time. So
Yeah.
anybody can do it, but it comes with really obsessing with making yourself into that kind of person that you want to be. And then you don't see, I'll end this whole rant with one kind of analogy. And you maybe have heard me say this if you've seen some of my content. It's about bamboo. It's basically that bamboo takes about 5 years and 6 weeks to grow. About 5 years and 6 weeks. But interestingly enough, the seeds of bamboo need to be watered where they are for 5 years before they break through the ground. They're very, very weak when they start. All the growth happens in that 5 years. And at the 6 week mark, or sorry, 5 year mark, bamboo will grow 80 feet in 6 weeks. So the point is, is that if you continue to water those seeds, if you continue to really be like, look, I'm just going to trust the process of I do my self-improvement routine every single day. I make sure I'm consuming this kind of content, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then again, you can get to the multiple six figure, not just single six figure. Like you can get to the multiple six figures like way faster than you expect, and then you're going to get to the million, and then you're going to be making a couple $1 million a year, and it's just going to keep going. So that's yeah, that's kind of the whole how I went from not having any sort of background to where I am.
That's huge, man. Love it. How can someone find like that one thing that they want to obsess over? Because I think like a lot of people want that, but they just don't really know how they can find it.
Do you mean like with respect to like business or like what specifically? Like, when you say the one thing they can obsess over, like what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. In respect to business, whatever, just something that they're like obsessed with,
yeah,
and like constantly thinking about, kind of like you have with like your business and your content.
sure, yeah, okay. So the first thing to know is that I don't think so. We talk about in this kind of community and whatever this kind of niche, we talk about like purpose a lot, and I think that can be kind of like find your purpose, chase your purpose, follow your purpose, like, and people can be confused on what that is. I think that one really important thing, and so I think purpose is kind of like that one thing. I think that you don't like discover your purpose, you develop it. And so like these people that are looking behind like trees and under like bushes to try and find their purpose, like it's not there. They find it by doing something that seems small, and then they apply, which I always talk about again, is an effort-based goal to get there. So the idea is like, if you say I'm going to make $1 million, or if you say I'm going to make 1 million sales by the end of the year, let's just say, right? That's
Hmm.
not necessarily something you can control. That's not an effort-based goal. That's a result or outcome-based goal. You can't really control
Yeah,
that. Okay. But what you can control is you can say until the end of the year, I'm gonna knock on 100 doors every single day. I'm gonna knock on 100 doors, and you in the back of your mind know that that should result in just law of averages is going to tell you like some of those people are going to convert, and
yeah,
that's something that's in your control. So with respect to how you find that one thing, it really is finding something that you think might be cool for you. It might be something that you want to do. It doesn't need to feel like, wow, this is my purpose. It doesn't need to feel that way because your purpose is not something you're going to discover. It's something that you're going to
yeah,
develop. And so really it's choosing one thing. If you're like, look, I'm going to do affiliate marketing or I'm going to do content creation, whatever it is, take that and be absolutely aggressive with yourself to stick to an effort-based goal. So it's like if you're like, I want to become an influencer, like that, dude, like that's literally what I'm doing with respect to like the reason why I know it's going to work with content creation for me. The reason why, and I'm going to tell you the same thing for you.
yeah.
The reason why is because so I literally like will not stop on my routine of uploading every single week. Every single week, I'm not going to stop until I fucking die. Like I'm just not going to stop. And it might get me nowhere. I might die with like the number of followers, subscribers, whatever that I have today. I might. But like I'm committing that like I'm just going to keep doing it. And so like I just know that effort-based goal of like every single day I'm putting work into it. And I won't get into the specific details of what I do for like to make sure that I'm moving that rock. But I mean, you can see if you follow some of my stuff, like every single day I'm doing it every single day. So the thing is like that's really how these things start to happen. Where it's like I have no doubt in my mind I'm going to get to the 1 million and the 10 million, whatever. I have no doubt because it's just like it doesn't even have to be me. It could be anyone. If fucking like Steve from accounting was like every single day I'm going to post every single day and I'm going to do in the background I'm going to take my time to read and consume other people whose content that I vibe with that keep me on my if you know again I'm going to keep coming back to this like if you know that consuming a certain kind of content or eating a certain kind of food or taking a cold shower or whatever if you know like that's when you're fucking on it like if you know then don't quit that, don't stop listening to them, don't stop taking your cold showers, don't stop whatever, anything that you can do to make your effort based goal like as easily accessible as possible and you can hit those markers. It's like, man, I don't know if I'm ever going to reach enlightenment, but what I can tell you is I'm going to meditate basically every single day until I die because I believe that that's the process that's going to get me there. And so it's like if you accept that, like if you are willing to expand your time horizon for success, like you will not lose. So that's kind of where I am. How do you find that one thing? So I'll repeat just as a quick summary here. How you're going to find that one thing or that purpose is really like something that you enjoy doing that you kind of like you want to see where it goes. It doesn't need to be you don't need to jump into, let's say, content creation, or let's say you start a Twitter account. You don't need to start writing on Twitter and be like, oh man, like I guess I got to do this until the day I die. Like am I really comfortable with that? Like you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
But find something that you're like, okay, like I'm going to see if this works because here's the thing too. Here's another fucking secret honestly is that so much of what you want to do, like if you want to be successful or you want to, whatever it might be, meet girls, look good, whatever it is, so much of those skills that you need to do any one of those things, you'll find doing any one of those things. So it's like if you really, really learn, for example, like let's just say you're like a pickup artist kind of guy, like you just want to meet more women and have more dates and whatever, right? Inevitably you're going to need to learn psychology. Like inevitably you're going to need to understand in two ways. You're going to need to understand their psychology in the sense of being like, hey, what can I say that's actually like attractive? What can I represent about myself? But also your own psychology in the sense that you're like, okay, I need to accept failure. Failure is a part of it. Like I need to accept the fact that I'm going to fail. Start to understand your own psychology. Now you've just learned, okay, psychology of talking to a person to communicate a message and accepting failure in yourself. Those two skills, let's take them out of the pickup artist kind of realm and let's move those into business. Okay, so now you understand you will fail along the way and you need to know how to communicate the right message to the person on the other side. So my point is like no matter where you decide to go, I think there's so much anxiety around starting because people are like, oh, do I want to like dig my roots into this? Like what, blah, blah, blah. The reality is it doesn't matter where you dig your roots into because those skills are going to be transferable to all of the things that matter to any young, ambitious guy. So it's really just having the discipline, and that's that's the smoke and mirrors of it all. Is that like it seems like you need to find the right niche or the right side hustle or the right whatever, and you don't. You don't. You just need to commit to one thing because the guy that actually commits to doing the thing and has an effort-based goal and then has that immersive environment, that system of input to listen to the same messages that keep him on that train, like that's the guy that's gonna fucking win. They're all the same. All the guys that win are the exact same. They just keep going and they learn the lessons and they can apply it. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
You're so right, yeah. And I think like all of these like making money online things, like all of them work. People have all done them. Like a YouTube channel works, SMA works, drop shipping works. Like pretty much everything does. You just need
Yeah.
to focus on just one thing and then commit yourself to it. So that's great advice. I I I I I really like that. So something I want to bring up is a tweet that you made about you leaving your girlfriend, which I really liked. Yeah, and like you were just saying, like quitting is a very important skill to have, but like it's hard to figure out when you should quit something, like your relationship, for example. So how do you know like if you should quit something or if you should just keep working at something until you get results?
Yeah. That's something that again is another like pitfall really easily is like not knowing. That's like not knowing when do I just like even though it's hard, it's like when do I just commit because I can learn the lessons of commitment and really like pushing it through, and when
Yeah.
should I just leave because I can clearly see this isn't serving me. It's a hard one. So um I guess yeah, I guess to answer the question kind of generally is like I had this feeling, like me personally, I'll talk about my own situation and maybe there can be
Yeah.
some wisdom we can find together from this situation. The reason why I left is because, and for the record, she's like an awesome person. So I didn't leave for anything negative in her at all.
Yeah.
I left because I was convinced that with her, I was basically guaranteed to be 99% of the guy I wanted to be. So again, that comes with benefits and drawbacks. Benefit is like it's pretty fucking good to be 99%. Like most people would take 99% of who they could be. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I think, and I thought I was almost guaranteed that. Like I thought she'd bring me to a place where I'd be 99% of the guy I wanted to be. But I had this suspicion that I might be able to be 100% of the guy I wanted to be if I just did it alone for a while. And so like it's a kind of a non-answer to be like it's intuitive, like it's your intuition that'll tell you. But I do think one of the most valuable things is like having a group of, especially if you're a young guy, having a group of other guys that um you have. It's almost like okay, so one of the benefits of like a therapist, for example, or
Yeah.
just talking to someone or a coach or something like that, is not necessarily so that when you're going through bad things that they can like help you solve them right away. One of the most useful tools is the fact that they have the continuity of who you've been in your ups and downs. So just by going and talking to someone every week, let's say you have a call, you have a buddy where you're just like, hey, we're gonna have a call on the calendar once a week. It's gonna be 30 minutes, and like for the first 15 minutes, I'm just gonna tell you about my last week, and then I want you to tell me about yours. Um, just having that is so powerful because they can see the continuity and like they can kind. It's almost like you can export and have like an external conscience in a way. And so
Yeah.
one thing that'll really help you when you should cut something and when you should stay is when someone else that's not in your brain and not being impacted by your emotions can be like, if you're like, man, you know, this affiliate marketing thing, like it's not working. I think that content creation is like the right way to go for me. He might be like, dude, shut up. You literally decided that you were going to do affiliate marketing 2 weeks ago. And you told me that your effort based goal that you decided that we both agreed was a smart goal for you. We both agreed that you were going to do it for 6 months and you were going to post every other day. And it hasn't been 6 months. So you have not yet earned the platform to be able to give up. So even if it is the best decision, even if the best decision is to walk away, we both agreed. And the reason I say we both is because you thought it was a good idea, but I agree with you externally that that was a good idea for you to try. We agreed that you would do this for 6 months, post twice a day. And so like until I've seen you do that, I'm not interested in having a conversation about you leaving. My
Yeah.
opinion, again, you can do what you want, but my opinion is that you're making a mistake. Or or on the flip side, someone might be like, yeah, dude, you've been doing this for 3 years. And the whole time you were less happy than I knew you 3 years ago. The whole time you haven't been enjoying your life at all. You haven't been, and even you're starting to have resentment towards even what you would hypothetically achieve. So like you're starting to be like, oh man, like content creators are such douches, like fucking whatever, or whatever. And so you don't even like what you hypothetically would be. So like maybe it is time to reconsider. Um, and here's another thing that's really like I think comforting is that, man, doors swing two ways. So like you could walk out of the door and be like, man, I'm gonna leave this, and then you could walk right back in the door. So it's not like you can take a break in the sense that, man, you decided you're gonna do content creation for a year, and you do it for a year, and you stick to that goal, which is great because, like I said before, just the commitment to doing something and planting those roots will teach you much more. So just that is insane. So there's that. But after a year, let's say you decide to like you leave, and then you do something else for like 3 months, and you're like, okay, I'll do this for 3 months, whatever. And then you can decide to walk back in the door of content creation and be like, okay, it's not like I learned nothing. I learned a bunch of stuff. I took a break from it, and now I realize this is what I want. In the case of relationships, it can be a little bit more difficult, but I still think the same things apply. Where you're like, look, yeah, I've woken up the past like week, and I'm not super excited to see her. Like, I don't necessarily want to be here, or be with her, or whatever. That's what you think. But in your mind, you're like, look, like I'm going to do this and really try for 3 months. Like I'm going to commit to waking up and maybe not deciding, maybe not wanting to be with her, maybe not being attracted to her, whatever it is, however you feel. But myself personally, like I'm going to give this 3 months, and I'm going to tell, like I said, I'm going to tell my confidant, my friend, my coach, my therapist, whatever. I'm going to tell them, hey, here's what I'm committing to. I'm going to do 3 months, and I'm going to see how that goes. And then after, I'm going to debrief with you and tell you how, my experiences. And if you're really smart, you might even start journaling where you keep some content along the way where you can reflect on how you've been feeling. Um, and then after that, like I said, that effort-based goal, I'm going to put in my 3 months, and I'm going to see, and then I'm going to make my decision. So I think it's that same thing of it's yeah. I think there's an element of like commitment, and then being like, you first have like someone who you can speak to determine, yes, this is a reasonable goal. Because if you said, listen, I don't really like her, it's been the last 3 years, I haven't really liked her, I'm just gonna see for the next 75 years, I'm just gonna see if like I still like her. It's like that's probably a bit extreme. So like you
Yeah.
need someone to be like, dude, 75 years, like come on, man, like let's do 4 weeks and see how you feel. You know what I mean? So like once you have that, and you can kind of export your conscience in a way, because emotions, man, like they could be tricky. So like if you have someone who can have the same thoughts as you, but are not as encumbered with the same emotions as you, it's very, 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 very telling. So very helpful. So yeah, that's what I would do. I would like go to someone who you trust, allow them to have the continuity of who you are as a person. Again, it could be a best friend, could be whoever. Be like, hey, here's how I'm feeling. I'm gonna put in my. I'm thinking that I'm just gonna put in this amount of effort to see where it goes. What do you think is reasonable? I'm thinking 2 months. I'm thinking 3 months. I'm thinking to the end of the day. Like I'm thinking whatever. Like, and then hopefully you trust them enough where they can give you some advice. Um, you go through with your commitment, and then if at the end of it you guys both agree that's not really good for you to continue to commit, then you have your answer.
That's really good. Yeah, I love that. So another tweet that you sent that I really like was that it was, who are your people? Who do you want to help? We all know you don't actually care about helping chiropractors scale to 10K per month. I love that, and I think you've got a really good message there. So I just want you to expand on that tweet more, because I think that is something that a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah, you're pulling up some good ones.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's just like I think that you can make money from people. Like you can be like, again, you can be
Yeah.
like, you know what? I think I think every like pet groomer. I could make like $100 off of every pet groomer in my city. That would get me to $100,000 a year, whatever. But it's like the reality is like the best scenario is like if you actually met up with guys like in my case, let's say like young men who like were like, hey, I really fuck with your content, you're cool, whatever. It's like, man, I actually want to hang out with you. And so it's like
Yeah.
if I can like man, if I was in someone's city and I knew there was someone who's like, hey, I really like your content, I'd be like, man, let's get together. Like because
Yeah.
it's like not only is it the benefit of like this is I'm also speaking to my former self, and so like I see a lot of myself in some of the people that like I hop on calls with who are asking me for I don't offer coaching, but people are like, yo, can I have coaching with you? Which but I don't do. But point is like if I can like give value and I can like make I mean in my case again I don't have nothing to offer at the moment, but like you make a living from this community and like you hang out with these people, and so you get this double benefit of like you genuinely make money doing what you love, but also for who you love. Like then
Yeah.
it's I don't know, it's really really powerful because that is like the fountain of youth, man. Like because you're making an impact on people who you actually want to impact. It's not you're not just like, oh great, like I made some money, which is cool. Like obviously that's cool. Don't get me wrong, like money's great. But if you're making money helping people that you actually would like be cool having a beer with or whatever it is, going out and just having a conversation.
Mhm.
Um yeah, man, that's just like the sweetest thing you could do, honestly. Like again, some of the people who like I get a lot of DMs. Like actually I think I get more DMs than like engagement on my posts, which is really interesting. Because and I
Really?
think yeah, I think
That's
so.
that's a really good sign.
Yeah, I think so. Because a lot of people are, I think a lot of people are like, again, there's insecurity, there's some nervousness, there's whatever. There's also people who just don't want to show, because you can see when someone replies to something, obviously, right? I think there's people who don't want to show that they struggle with certain things. So like, I'll say something, I'll be like, hey man, this really moved me, blah 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 blah, and they just maybe their personal brand or their character on social media is just not someone who they want to like show an association with someone who's saying whatever I might say. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like the point is like that's definitely yeah. I'm really skeptical of people who again are looking to help like pet groomers, hairdressers, and fucking acupuncturists and whatever. It's like, oh, are you really genuinely desperate to help acupuncturists? Like, are you? I'm not no talking shit about them, but it's like I don't think that's for the most part. That's not what you're actually looking to do. It's like I'll meet someone, and again, not talking shit about any profession at all, but
Yeah.
like I'll meet someone at like a work event who will be like, yeah, we install HVAC units in like large warehouses. And it's like, okay, I understand you're making a lot of money because that's pretty niche. I get it. But
Mhm.
it's like, are you genuinely really passionate about like cooling, like cooling and heating? Like, is that like your, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what you make a living. But it's like, how sick would it be if you're like, imagine the feeling of like being like, okay, imagine this guy who installs HVAC units. Imagine he
Yeah.
got to do it in the home of his like of a celebrity that he just loves, someone he just looks up to. That would be like the best day of his life. Now, imagine if every single customer was like that. Every single customer is like, wow, I got to meet a celebrity. I got to meet this guy that I look up to. Like, wow, I'm so motivated to
Yeah.
meet this guy or meeting this guy, or whatever. Imagine if that was your feeling. Like, you can chase that. Like, you can literally do that where you're like, the guys that I talk to are guys that like I really appreciate or want to help or look up to or just like whatever. Like, you can do that, but you have to be intentional about that. So yeah, so I just made the post about saying like people need to stop like just being like, okay, like where's the money? Where's the money? Because the thing is like you're gonna be really happy when you're making money and you're doing it around people that you really fuck with. So, and for me,
Mhm.
it's like again, seeing young men be like, I want to look good, I want to make money, I want to have a good group of friends, I want to have a good head on my shoulders, I want to have like values, I want to have all this kind of shit. Like, dude, that gets me pumped, man. So whenever I talk to someone who's like, you can clearly see resonates with that message, like not unlike yourself, like it's motivating, man.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think trying to figure out who you want to provide value to, like for example, like you providing value to young men, like I think it's it's more important to figure that out than like what exactly you want to do. Because I think if if you find like a super specific person or group of people who you want to help, the possibilities are endless. Like I I'd say the same thing as you. Like I definitely care about young men, people like my younger self, and like there's like a ton of things that I would do to help young men, like for example, like help chiropractors who are helping young men or something. or some like weird thing like that because I actually care about them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's super important to figure out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'll also add, I think the really special thing about the self-improvement community for young men is it breeds more people who want to help young men. So like if you're someone who again, like let's go back to the HVAC guy. Like
Yeah,
I don't think if some guy's like, "Hey, you make me want to be an HVAC guy." Like, "Wow, like I want to go and install heating in people's buildings." It's like I'm sure he'd be like, like I don't know. I'm sure that would feel good, but it's like it's not the
yeah,
same as like in this community where when you consume this stuff, like you naturally get to a point where you're like, fuck, like I also want to do, like as you're getting older, you're like, okay, I'm
yeah.
23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 35, 45, 55, whatever. You're like, wow, I really, really want to help the same community. Like I have a passion for doing the same thing. Like a lot of the guys that I talk to are the same way where they're like, yeah, like I want to help young guys. It's like, and it's just like this desire to be like, you're helped and you look up to someone who's like slightly further than you. And then they look back and like, shit, who can I help? And it's like it's a really, really crazy community. So I think that's one thing that's really magical about when you start getting into this is that like not only do your friends have this same like view of being like, how can I help? Like, how can I make someone fall into less pitfalls and make more money and be better with women or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Um, and then that just like is a self fucking fulfilling prophecy in the sense that it's just this perpetuating cycle that just keeps going. So that's one thing that's really, really special, I think, about this community.
100%. And something that I love about self-improvement is that you never know who you're helping with your content. Like someone might see this podcast and really resonate with something, and that it helps them a lot. Then somewhat like someone sees them like doing that thing and they inspire that person, and then like that person inspires other people, and it just keeps going. So you might have impacted like 100 or like 1,000 people uh, with like something random that you said on this podcast that like you
Cool.
didn't even like intend on like that happening with.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So let's say you could give a TED talk on anything that you haven't spoken about online. What would that be?
That I haven't spoken about online.
Yeah, that you've never said a word about online.
um, that's funny. That's some good questions. Because I've done a couple of these. This has been really, really good.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. I have a couple. I'd say one would probably be language learning. That'd be up there.
Yeah.
Um, I've mentioned a couple times that I like, one of my hobbies is like when COVID started or whatever, like I kind of just picked up, started learning Japanese. So like that's something I do all the time where,
That's
and
it.
there's a lot of like theory. What's really cool is like there's a lot of like that's a whole community too. Like the language learning community is a whole community. And then the way I learn
Yep.
languages, which has to do with like a lot of input and like listening practice and stuff, like even that's its own community of language learning people. And so like that's definitely a community that I really love. And I've learned a lot from that. Like for example, like I do talk about on a lot of my content, like I talk about immersive environments and this idea of being like, just have it fucking everywhere. Like who you want to be and what you want to hear and who you want to turn into, have that everywhere. And like um, that came from the language learning community because that's how I learned a lot of what I learned is like for example like when I learned a lot of the stuff about which like I said earlier was like not the sexy stuff so stuff about like logistics and like shipping and all this fucking boring ass shit
Yeah.
um that I learned because I was listening to like logistics podcasts and watching videos and reading books and like having them everywhere like I had a logistics textbook beside my toilet, like on a shelf. So that's like if I'm just sitting there, I'm not going on my phone. I'm gonna open a logistics textbook. And honestly, so that was a big. I actually to this day I have two iPods actually, like
Oh
not
yeah.
iPhone, like I have iPods, so that I can just have Japanese on them, so I can just listen to them all the time. And I'm disconnected from the internet. So I think if I had to give a TED talk, I'd probably give a TED talk on what I've learned. That'd be the first thing is like what I've learned about how the brain processes language. Because there's just a lot of interesting things there for me. Um, and then the other one, which I have spoken about a little bit, but I haven't really gone into it, is I give like a 101, probably a 101 course or talk on probably maybe diet. I'd say like the specifics about diet, like what I believe
Oh
about diet.
yeah.
That'd probably be in there.
What's like the most surprising piece of information that you know about diet?
Um, well, so I'll preface this by saying that diet is very, very, very touchy in the sense that you have people on both sides of the aisle that are absolutely convinced that the
Yeah.
other one's wrong. It's like very political. So, I'll rephrase. I'll kind of tiptoe around this. It's like I'm not gonna say here's what I absolutely know about diet, but I'll say here's something that I found lately that I take to be true. So, it's that um, I'd probably say it's that like vegetables are not like the superfood that I think we're told that they are.
Oh yeah.
I think every organism wants to live, and a lot of the defense mechanisms that animals have are neutralized once you have the animal on the plate or on the barbecue or whatever. They're basically neutralized. Whereas for plants, because they don't have things like talons or fangs or fists or anything like that, they have to defend themselves with other kind of means. And a lot of those means are not neutralized when you start eating them. And a lot of those things manifest as a whole bunch of stuff. It could be skin issues, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be digestional issues, and it could be things even larger like organ failure and stuff like that. So I think the main piece of information is like once we get intuitive about how we eat and we start to think like, does this really super spicy pepper like want to be eaten? Like, is this a sign that it wants to be eaten or that it says stay the fuck away from me? Because it literally could
Yeah.
say, and so I think what we start looking at that way, it's like, isn't it strange that all children on the planet seem to have this like aversion to eating broccoli? Like, why is that a stereotype for humans that can't even think about it? Like, and why is it, we start to think about these things and we're like, and it starts to get really fascinating. And so when you kind of go down those rabbit holes, I'd say that's for diet. That's something where I'd definitely give a TED talk on. It's just like prompting people's curiosity, to be like, yeah, hold on, wait, why? That's interesting. Why is it that all of these superfoods, none of them feel as appealing to me as like if I wanted to eat like a steak, for example? Like why does my mouth water when I think of steak, and why when I think of raw broccoli or like a raw carrot? It's not the end of the world, but it's like I would never be super hungry, just dying, like, oh, my stomach is so empty, like I'm so hungry, and be like, I need a carrot. Like that just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So yeah,
That's very true actually, because both steak and broccoli are good for you, but there's only one that you actually seem to want to have.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's really interesting. So what does your diet look like now?
Um, right now, so yeah, so echoing what I said before, my diet is mainly there's a lot of I'd say animal based eating. So it's
Mhm.
mainly like I have a lot of beef. Beef is like the absolute number one. I eat some
Yeah.
eggs. And then I'll have like fruit. Fruit does, for example, it does seem to want to be eaten. Fruit's kind of a genius thing that nature's made in the sense that it tastes really good, so a deer is incentivized to eat it, but it can't digest the seeds. So a deer will eat a blackberry, will walk somewhere else, and then will shit out a seed in a pile of fertilizer somewhere else, and the plant will reproduce. So it's kind of genius. But yeah, so I'd say fruit, a lot of fruit, and mainly beef, eggs, like I mentioned. And then yeah, dude, I'm super 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 simple, man. Like that's basically all I eat. And then if I were to have like a cheat day, which I don't have very often, like I'd go for sushi. Like sushi's my absolute number one favorite. Um, but yeah, that's basically it, man. It's kind of boring, but every single day is eggs, beef. Yeah, I honestly I don't even season them. I use salt, exclusively salt. I don't use pepper or anything like that.
Yeah, same here, honestly. Yeah, I don't know if you like feel fit to do this, but w- okay. So I really want to go carnivore or have like a similar diet to you, but like of course money is a constraint. Like I know
Mhm.
that carnivore is super expensive.
It
If you don't
is.
feel comfortable saying this, like what kind of diet would you recommend for me then? Because I do want to be low on carbs, but I also don't want to like spend a ton of money.
Of course, yeah, that's hard. Yeah, no, I feel comfortable, man. Like again, I'll preface it by
Yeah.
again saying I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, I have nothing. Yeah, I don't have anything that would make me like legally qualified to give any of this advice,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, so that is a hard one. So the first thing I would say is my belief is that even a lower quality beef is a higher quality diet than most of what you're going to eat. So I would take a lower quality beef and a cheaper beef over a really high quality vegetable, for example. That's the first
Oh,
thing I say. Second thing, um, so there's two elements really to carnivore. There's the introductory part and the eliminatory part. I think you can do
Yeah.
so. There's the like what you're starting to eat, and obviously what you're stopping to eat. The eliminatory part can be pretty easy. So that's just like don't eat certain things. That's it. You'll already have a huge boost by doing that. So like if you try and remove processed stuff, whatever, that's huge. I would say if you're gonna have something to like fill your belly, like in terms of carbs, even though it is technically it's a grain, but which is generally not that bad. But it seems like the lowest inflammatory grain is white rice.
Oh yeah.
So white rice is really, really cheap. That's a pretty good one. I would say again, beef like every day having beef in some quantity, I would say is essential. Like that would be my absolute number one. Um, yeah, I'd have to think about this one, man, because you can also I wouldn't necessarily, okay, so a couple things. One is I wouldn't necessarily sacrifice what I'm eating, but I would look for ways to save money in the sense of maybe it is a larger upfront investment in the sense that if you're like, okay, I'm gonna buy beef for the next 2, 3 months, and like you put it in your freezer, and it's like you're gonna get it in like that we talked about earlier, the wholesale retail sort of thing, like where it's like, let's say beef, I'm just gonna say, let's say ground beef is $10 a pound, but you could get it at like $8 a pound if you bought it a whole shitload at once. It's a really annoying investment to have to make when you're like, oh, so much fucking money. Like, I don't want to do that. But it pays off. So that's one thing is looking for opportunities like that. The next thing is like, man, the world is run by people. So if you can get friends or friendly, just a guy who, if you go to a butcher shop, that's another thing. Instead of going to a grocery store, you go to a butcher shop and like you kind of become friends with the people at the butcher shop. Like they can kind of help
Yeah.
you. And then if you're just like like super straight up and you're like, hey, like I'm looking to try this sort of a diet, and I want to come exclusively to you guys. Like, what would you recommend for like a kind of more value option or a more kind of like budgeted option where, like, for example, like ground beef is something I would say is like the cheapest one.
Okay.
So don't go for steaks, go for ground beef. I actually do that too. I could get steaks, but I go for ground beef just because of the convenience. And the thing is, ground beef, if you don't know it's basically just all of the trimmings from all of the like quality cuts. They just kind of cut off and then put it in a grinder, and then they put that in a bag, basically. So it's like all
Yeah.
of the kind of leftover stuff, but nutritionally, it's the exact same, and it also is fucking delicious in my opinion. So ground beef, go for the value purchase in terms of like more upfront like payment if they could do that. Make friends with the butcher. Yeah, I wouldn't go the direction of compromising what I'm eating. I would probably just try and find the value option because man, like my biggest expense probably personally is my diet. And I've just found that if I protect that, things just are better. So um white rice, eggs where you can. I'd say beef is essential every day. That's what I would say. If you like lamb, you could do that too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't if you're gonna go more carnivore in the sense that like you're really like strict on your eating. I wouldn't go towards chicken. Like I wouldn't be like I'm gonna have chicken all the time. You
Oh
can have
yeah.
it here and there. It just doesn't have nearly the nutritional value as beef. Um, and then something I'll also say, which is actually quite cheap, is the way to keep your health as high as possible is you also want to be consuming organ meats. So I'm talking like heart, kidney, and liver. You might not like them. I didn't like them when I started. Um,
Yeah.
but they're pretty cheap because they're not in high demand. And
Yeah.
those are like the real superfoods. So, and then
Really.
yeah, oh yeah, dude, like I could go for hours. So we won't do that now, but maybe we could do this again, and I'll tell you more. But basically, someone I would recommend you looking at if you haven't heard of him already is Paul Saladino. Are you familiar with him?
I don't think so.
Okay, so look into Paul. He's like the biggest carnivore, like other than like Liver King or whatever. But he's like a
Yeah.
bit of a obviously he's like a bit of a like character now. Like anyway,
Yeah.
Paul Saladino. The irony is that the guy has the word salad in his last name. But anyway, yeah, Paul Saladino. Look him up because he has a lot of stuff on his YouTube and on his socials where he actually is like, here's how to eat carnivore for $10 a day. And he'll like walk you, he'll go into Walmart or go into whatever and be like, yo, here's what you buy, here's the quantities, here's how you do it. So he'd be really qualified to help you out. But yeah, the harsh reality is that it is an expensive diet, and so like you can decrease quantity, you can go for value buy, the different things you can do. Um, but the kind of the long and the short of it is like, man, beef is like not a cheap food, um, and so especially if it's grass fed, so that's a challenge. But yeah, look at Paul Saladino. I'll shoot you a message after on Twitter or something like that, and just go through his content because he has literally exactly what you're asking for in terms of like the value purchasing all that kind of stuff.
100%, man. Appreciate that a ton. Thank you.
No worries, dude.
Yeah. So one tweet that you sent that I really liked was that useful is always better than true. And I can totally agree because Because I think something that's really helped me has just been like choosing the beliefs that I want to have, and like taking away the ones that I don't. Even if like some of the beliefs that don't really serve me happen to be true, and some of the ones that I'm putting into my life like aren't really true. Like I find that that's like basically a cheat code to life. Like fixing your beliefs, and then I guess just kind of like giving yourself beliefs that are useful, not true. So I'm just wondering, what are some of those for you?
Yeah, so I think one is that some of the stuff I've said like earlier today, it's like one is that this is kind of a general one, is like, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That they say that, but that's definitely something where it's just like, look, like, yeah, that's one. The next one is, I don't have any particular religious affiliation, but I think believing in karmic energy is pretty valuable. Like, look, if you go and you try and help someone, like, and your goal is to help
For
someone,
sure.
you will be helped in turn. And maybe you won't be, maybe it seems like you won't be, but I believe you will be. It also disincentivizes taking some negative action. So for example, it's like you see, again, this is probably a shitty example, but like let's say you see someone's like fucking food, you see their sandwich in the work like fridge. It's like you could eat it. It's like you could take it. But if you do, like you're inviting the universe later for someone to steal something from you, and it might come back in a different way. It might be your car. And so it's like for
Yeah.
me, I don't know if that's true, but it's useful. And then a more kind of like tactical, strategic one is like, and I've heard someone say this in the past, but I totally believe it too, is that like I believe that if you lie in your bed with your eyes closed in a dark room with no sound, okay, that is 98% as rejuvenating as fully being asleep. You don't need to be asleep. That is 98% as rejuvenating as being asleep. Now, I don't know if that's true. That could be total bullshit. It could be 0% as helpful as sleep. But what I can tell you is the fact that I do believe that, and I see little markers that might be true, has has basically helped me eliminate. You know when you're trying to go to bed, and you're like, fuck, I gotta go to bed. I gotta wake up in like, I gotta wake up in like 3 hours or 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. I gotta get to sleep. Like fuck, fall asleep, fall asleep. That anxiety keeps you awake. That epinephrine in your
Yeah.
system keeps you awake. But you know what helps you fall asleep is if you believe that you're basically sleeping even if you're awake. Shit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think I
You're
might.
good. Think you just cut out for a sec.
Okay, yeah. So I was just saying, like, if you believe that being awake with your eyes closed in a dark room, basically looking asleep,
Yeah,
is as rejuvenating as sleep, then you'll fall asleep in 2 seconds because you're like, look, it doesn't matter either
yeah,
way. So
for sure.
that's something that I could be true, might not be true. I have no idea, but what I can tell you is that it helps a lot. Another thing is like, for example, like NoFap or that kind of stuff. Man, there's all these videos of being like NoFap superpowers. I'm sure you've seen them. Like, NoFap, like girls can't not touch you and whatever.
Girls
And
can
man,
smell their
might be
attention on you.
that's it, right? Look, and it might be true, might not be true. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is like, if I practice NoFap and I feel like, oh, I can work an extra 5 hours today because I'm doing NoFap, and I actually work the extra 5 hours, then like, great. And if that's my like little thing in my mind that I'm like, hey, if I wake up if I know the new fad is to wake up at 6, and so I wake up at 5:50 because that gives me this 10-minute advantage, which if that compounds over my life is years and years and years of whatever, that might not be true. It totally might not be true. But if I believe it and that gets me to work a little harder, I have this little kind of, I don't know, I have this little kind of like scheming kind of vibe in my mind where I'm like, yeah, like I'm working a little, like, and so I do.
Yeah,
Then yeah, man, like that's though it might be true, might not be true, but I can tell you that I have way better results as a result of me choosing to believe these things.
for sure. I love what you said about sleep as well. And I think like a great like useful not true belief to have is that you don't need good sleep. Because even though like yeah you do need good sleep, I think just having the belief that like you don't need it, it reduces like the anxiety and that feeling like when you don't get a good night's sleep. Because I know
Sure.
at least for me it's like for example yesterday I didn't sleep too well, and then for the whole start of the day I was like, oh, I had such a bad sleep, like I'm not gonna be productive or anything, and then that did happen because I told myself that. So I just think that
Yeah.
that's like a useful belief. Like if some night you happen to not get any sleep, just saying to yourself like I don't need it
Yeah.
anyways.
Do you use an aura ring? Do you know what that is?
I want to. Like
Okay.
those and whoops look really interesting.
Okay, yeah. So the reason I bring it up is because here's something else that I do. I do not check my aura ring if someone uses Whoop, I do not check how I slept until I get my most important thing done for the day.
Yeah,
Because I don't want to look at it and be like, I want to wake up and be like, wow, okay, let's go get it. And then look at my thing and be like, oh, turns out I had a shitty sleep, my brain's not working, never mind. I don't want to fucking do
Yeah,
that. So it's like I'm yeah. Anyway, so I think that's also really important. It's just like, man, I just wake up and I'm like, oh, well, I gotta get to work. I gotta do my shit. I don't know how many hours I slept. I don't know if I got REM sleep or deep sleep or light sleep or whatever the fuck. But what I can tell you is I'm getting the work done.
a hundred
So
percent. I think that's the problem with morning routines too. Like, I think in the self-improvement space, people rely so much on their morning routine. And then it's like if they meditate for 13 minutes instead of 15 minutes, their day is now ruined. Or like something crazy like that. Like they don't do one thing in their morning routine. And now like they have a bad mindset for the whole day and
right.
their day's ruined because of that.
Yeah, like I mean, let me put it to you this way, just to summarize what you're saying there, is that your self improvement routine or self improvement practices, whatever you have, should make you more resilient. Okay, you're going into you're meditating, so your mind's more resilient. You're doing cold showers, so you have a little bit more discipline, or your body, your white blood cells higher count, whatever. You work out, more resilience. You eat a good diet, more resilience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More resilience. How resilient is a motherfucker who cries if he doesn't get to drink his alkaline water? And he's like, oh, I can't do my, what is it? I can't do my work today. I can't grind on my business or whatever because I didn't drink my sparkling mountain water. That doesn't sound very resilient. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you got to get to a point as a guy where you realize that you have to get it done regardless. That's actually another tweet that I made where I said, like I will get it done regardless. And it's just like, man, the regardless is what's important. It's like in an ideal world, you could do all your stuff, tick off all your boxes, whatever. But sometimes the work still needs to be done. It just needs to get done. If you said you were going to upload today, you're fucking uploading today. Like as is happening. And so don't allow your mind. If you give your mind an opportunity to talk you out of it, it will. So just don't. It's just like, look, I'm just doing it, and it sucks. And here's the thing:
Yeah.
you can complain. I actually say sometimes. I'm kind of changing my opinion. I used to say never complain, don't complain, but now I'm kind of like there's kind of this nuance where I'm like, you can complain as much as you want, complain as much as you want, but only if you're doing the shit. So it's like you can the whole time you're working out, you're like, oh fuck this, I hate it. That's fine. As long as you're working out, say that between sets. Like I don't give a shit. Complain the whole time. But as long as you're getting your ass to the gym, complain. Whatever. So that's it now. It's like you can complain, but complaints cannot be a reason to not do the thing.
Exactly, man. So we're almost at time. So
Yeah.
the last question I want to ask you is a question that I ask a lot of my guests. What do you want to do before you die? Like, what's on your bucket list?
Hmm. Okay. Couple things. One, I think I probably want to spend an extended period in Japan. Um, Two, um, I think it'd be really cool to hit the $1 billion mark. So get into a billion. Three, I would want to have, I'd want to leave with the belief, like I want to at some point feel like I have given more to the world than I've extracted.
Yeah.
Um, and then again, just being kind of on brand, it's the whole um, what you can become, you must become. So honestly, I want to become everything that when in my mind, there's a feeling the same way, and we'll go back to this will tie it all together. When you ask me about throwing paper with my friend, and I told
Yeah.
you that, like, when I was in elementary school, and I told you that I just had this feeling that, like, I was going to get there eventually. I think there will be this sort of checkpoint where I remember that kid and I look in the mirror and I'm like, I did it. So and I think that will come. And that's what I want to do before I die. I want to be able to think back to that kid and think back to his aspirations of like really who he wanted to be and not know exactly what shape that takes, but just have that moment where I can look myself in the mirror and say, I did it.
That's so powerful, man. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Spencer.
My
That
pleasure.
was that was like one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done. So thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom and like providing all this value to not only the people listening, but to me as well. Like that was an amazing time. So I just want to thank you.
Yeah, man, it was an absolute pleasure doing it, man. You seem like a great guy. I'd be happy to do it again. So all of the best and keep going, dude. What you can become, you must become.
You too, man. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later.
Take care, my friend.
You too.